They watched you in silence. They studied how you stayed calm under pressure, how you saw things others missed, how you walked away while others reacted, how you trusted Allah when everything around you was collapsing. They thought, if we can just train people to think like them, we can replace them. So they built systems, ran programs, trained minds, and molded attitudes, but one by one, every single person kit. Not because the training was too hard, but because what Allah placed inside you was never meant to be copied. This is not about ego, this is about divine design. Some minds are trained, but some souls are chosen. And when Allah trains a servant through trials, patience, and faith, no institution on earth can reproduce that result. Today, you are about to understand why they failed, why you remained, and why Allah protected you from being duplicated. Stay with me, because this message is not for everyone, but if you feel it in your chest, it was written for you. What you carry inside you was never assembled in a classroom, never sharpened by instruction manuals, never perfected through observation alone. It was forged in the unseen moments when you were tested beyond explanation, when Allah placed you in seasons of loss, isolation, betrayal, delay, and pressure not to break you but to shape you. Because training can inform the mind, but only trials refine the soul. And while others were being taught techniques, you were being taught trust. While others were memorizing strategies, you were learning surrender. And while others were practicing confidence, you were practicing reliance on Allah when nothing made sense. And that is why no program could recreate you, because what molded you were nights when your heart was heavy, yet your sajda was sincere. Days when doors closed, yet your faith refused to collapse. Moments when you were misunderstood, but chose patience over revenge, silence over ego, and obedience over impulse. And Allah used those very trials to carve wisdom into your reactions, depth into your thinking, and steadiness into your spirit. So when pressure came, you didn't panic, you didn't perform, you didn't pretend you endured, because endurance is not learned, it is lived. And this is why those who tried to walk your path quit early, because they wanted the outcome without the purification, the authority without the humility, the strength without the surrender. But Allah does not entrust heavy responsibilities to untested hearts, and He does not give clarity to souls that have not been confused first, and He does not grant leadership to those who have not been humbled privately. So what you carry today is the result of divine calibration, where every delay taught you patience, every betrayal sharpened your discernment, every hardship anchored your faith, and every unanswered question trained you to trust Allah's wisdom over your own understanding. And that is why you stand different, move different, and think different, not because you were trained better, but because Allah chose to refine you personally, and what Allah forges through trial cannot be duplicated by human training. Your discernment was never something you picked up from experience alone, nor something you mastered by watching people or studying patterns, because long before you could explain why something felt wrong, Allah had already placed within you an inner awareness that reacted before words were spoken and before intentions were revealed. And that awareness was sharpened through sincerity, through moments when you were hurt for trusting too easily, misled for seeing good in others, and tested for remaining pure in a world that rewards deception. And instead of allowing those moments to harden your heart, Allah refined your insight, teaching you to feel truth without becoming suspicious, and to recognize danger without becoming bitter. And this is why your discernment does not come with arrogance or paranoia, but with calm certainty, because it is rooted in divine protection, not ego, and those who tried to imitate the way you see quickly grew exhausted, anxious and confused, because discernment without Allah becomes fear, but discernment with Allah becomes peace. And while others need proof, confrontation, and confirmation, Allah gives you clarity through unease, hesitation, and a quiet nudge that says, "Step back," and that nudge has saved you more times than you can count, even when you didn't fully understand it in the moment, because Allah guards His sincere servants in ways they cannot always articulate, and He places light in the hearts of those who choose honesty over manipulation, humility over control, and obedience over cleverness. And this is why your awareness deepened with age instead of becoming cynical, why your intuition matured without becoming cold, and why you can walk away from situations without needing closure, because when Allah reveals enough for you to be safe, He does not require you to see everything, and those trained to think like you quit because they tried to force insight instead of receiving it, forgetting that discernment is not a muscle strengthened by effort alone, but a gift entrusted to those whose hearts remain clean in a corrupt world. And Allah protects those hearts by teaching them how to see without losing themselves. Your silence is not emptiness, and it is not fear. It is control, discipline, and deep self-mastery. Because remaining silent when provoked, misunderstood, accused, or underestimated requires conquering the most difficult enemy Allah mentions, the unchecked ego. And while most people speak to defend pride, react to restore status, or argue to reclaim control, you learn through painful lessons that not every battle deserves your voice, and not every insult deserves your energy. And this understanding did not come naturally. It came after moments when speaking only made things worse, when explaining yourself drained your spirit, and when Allah showed you that dignity often lives in restraint. And so, your silence became intentional, strategic, and spiritually grounded, not because you lacked words, but because you valued peace over validation and wisdom over noise. And those who tried to imitate you discovered quickly how heavy silence feels when the ego is still loud, because holding the tongue while the heart is burning requires patience, and holding composure while being falsely judged requires trust in Allah's justice, and holding still while others provoke requires confidence in your own worth. And without these inner anchors, silence becomes unbearable, suffocating, and frightening, which is why they broke, spoke too soon, reacted emotionally, and exposed themselves, while you remained steady because Allah taught you that He defends those who restrain themselves for His sake, that truth does not need constant announcement, and that power is often quiet. And over time your silence trained others more than their words ever could, revealing intentions, exposing insecurity, and allowing Allah to handle matters you no longer needed to touch. And this is why your silence unsettles people, because it reflects control they do not possess, clarity they have not earned, and strength that was forged through surrender, making your quiet presence louder than any argument they could ever make. You move through life with a calm certainty that unsettles people because your decisions are not driven by applause, approval, trends, pressure, or fear of rejection, but by a deep internal awareness that every step you take is ultimately accountable to Allah alone. And this awareness did not appear overnight. It was built slowly through disappointment, through moments when pleasing people cost you peace, when explaining yourself brought no understanding, and when obeying Allah required you to disappoint others. And over time, Allah trained your heart to detach from external validation and anchor itself in divine accountability. So you stopped asking, "How will they feel?" and began asking, "Will Allah be pleased?" And this shift changed everything: how you speak, how you decide, how you wait, how you walk away, and how you endure loneliness without resentment. Because when a person knows they will stand alone before Allah, the noise of the crowd loses its power. And this is why you are not easily rushed, pressured, or manipulated. Because urgency that is not from Allah does not move you, and guilt that is not earned does not control you, and praise that is excessive does not intoxicate you, because your compass is not social acceptance, but divine alignment. And those who tried to imitate your way of moving quickly realized how heavy this responsibility is, because answering to Allah requires honesty with the self, discipline in private, and courage to remain firm when misunderstood. And without a strong relationship with Allah, this kind of independence becomes unbearable, isolating, and frightening, which is why many crave freedom but cannot handle accountability, crave leadership but fear standing alone, crave purpose but resist sacrifice. While you learn that purpose always comes with weight, and that weight can only be carried by a heart that trusts Allah's wisdom, even when outcomes are unclear. And so you move deliberately, not impulsively, confidently, not arrogantly, gently, not weakly. Because you are not trying to prove anything to people, you are trying to fulfill an amana entrusted to you by Allah. And this is why your presence feels grounded, your choices feel intentional, and your absence speaks louder than your explanation, because a person who answers to Allah no longer needs permission from creation, and that level of inner authority cannot be taught, copied, or forced. It can only be earned through sincerity, sacrifice, and unwavering submission to the one who sees what people never will. Your patience is not the kind that merely endures discomfort while quietly resenting it, nor the kind that survives by numbing the heart and suppressing emotion, because what sustains you is not tolerance but faith, a living, breathing certainty that Allah sees, Allah hears, Allah measures, and Allah never wastes a moment of sincere endurance. And this distinction is why you can remain steady in situations that exhaust others, because tolerance eventually runs out. It frays under delay, it collapses under injustice, and it turns bitter when results do not appear. But faith renews itself with every prayer, every remembrance, every private conversation you have with Allah when no one else understands what you are carrying. And you learned this through seasons where nothing moved forward outwardly, while everything was being rebuilt inwardly, where doors stayed closed long enough for your intentions to be purified, where silence from people taught you reliance on Allah's nearness, and where waiting stopped feeling like punishment and began feeling like preparation. Because Allah trained your heart to recognize that delay is not denial, and stillness is not abandonment, and this is why your patience has depth rather than tension, calm rather than bitterness, and strength rather than exhaustion. Because you are not simply putting up with hardship, you are trusting Allah through it, and trusting Allah changes the weight of everything, turning pain into purpose, waiting into worship, and endurance into elevation. While those who tried to imitate your patience without sharing your faith found themselves drained, frustrated, and angry, because patience without belief feels like suffocation, like standing still in a burning room with no promise of escape. But patience with Allah feels like standing firm in a storm, knowing rescue is written, even if the timing is hidden. And this is why you do not rush outcomes, force doors, or compromise values just to escape discomfort, because your patience is anchored in yaqeen, certainty that Allah's wisdom exceeds your urgency and His plan surpasses your perception, and so you wait without panic, you endure without losing yourself, and you continue without becoming hard, because you know that Allah is not slow, He is precise, and every moment you remain patient for His sake is reshaping you in ways that ease never could, strengthening your character, sharpening your discernment, softening your heart, and increasing your reward beyond what immediate relief would have given you. And this is why your patience intimidates people, because it cannot be provoked, manipulated, or worn down easily, since it does not draw its strength from circumstance but from connection, not from optimism but from belief, not from personality but from submission. And this is the kind of patience the Quran praises, the kind the prophets embodied, peace be upon them, the kind that carries a person through loss without collapse and through delay without despair, because it is powered by faith in a Lord who promises that ease follows hardship, that justice is inevitable, and that those who remain patient are never, ever forgotten. You have arrived at a place of inner stability and spiritual grounding that most people never achieve in their entire lives. A place where being misunderstood, misjudged, or misrepresented no longer shakes your sense of identity, triggers defensiveness, or compels you to over-explain yourself, because the core of who you are is no longer borrowed from public opinion, fleeting approval, or external validation, but is firmly anchored in the awareness of your relationship with Allah. And this depth of grounding was not granted lightly. It was forged through years of being misread, judged without context, falsely accused, criticized unfairly, and quietly observed by people who never bothered to know your heart. And instead of allowing these experiences to harden you, Allah used them to strip away the fragile reliance on human recognition, teaching you that clarity with Allah matters infinitely more than clarity with creation, and that true peace does not come from being understood, but from being aligned with your purpose and the one who created you. And this realization has allowed you to withstand situations that would destroy others, because misunderstanding no longer provokes panic, anxiety, or insecurity within you, but becomes a test of your patience, faith, and sincerity. And you understand that even the prophets, peace be upon them, were frequently misunderstood, mocked, and rejected despite their unwavering truth and purity. And if they endured such treatment with patience and reliance on Allah, then your own experiences of being misjudged are not signs of failure, but confirmations that you are walking a higher path, a path that requires resilience, integrity, and trust in divine wisdom. And over time, Allah strengthened your inner voice so that it no longer trembles or doubts itself when others question your intentions, actions, or decisions, because you know what you carry within you. You know the battles you have survived, the patience you have cultivated, the sincerity of your heart, and the guidance Allah has placed in your soul, even when the world does not recognize it. And this self-awareness has become your shield and armor, enabling you to listen without absorbing unnecessary criticism, observe without internalizing negativity, and respond with composure without compromising your strength. And those who attempted to imitate your serenity and confidence quickly realized that true comfort with being misunderstood requires a soul rooted in divine consciousness, because when identity is still dependent on external perception, every false assumption, rumor, or silence feels like a wound, every misinterpretation becomes a burden, and every misjudgment triggers insecurity. But when your identity is anchored in Allah's awareness of you, misunderstanding becomes merely uncomfortable rather than destructive, and it no longer compels you to seek validation, correction, or approval from those who are not meant to see your truth. And this has freed you from the exhausting cycle of explanation, justification, and emotional overextension, because you understand that some people are only meant to witness you from a distance, some are meant to test your patience, restraint, and sincerity, and others are only temporary participants in your journey whose opinions have no bearing on your ultimate purpose. And this awareness allows you to remain silent when misrepresented, calm when doubted, focused when excluded, and unwavering when judged unfairly, because your direction and your actions are no longer determined by perception, but by divine purpose, and your purpose is guided by Allah, not by public opinion, societal pressure, or the desire to be understood. And over time, this comfort with being misunderstood has refined your character, teaching you humility instead of defensiveness, introspection instead of resentment, patience instead of impulsive reaction, and trust instead of the need to control outcomes, because Allah uses misunderstanding to strip away ego, purify intentions, and redirect you towards spaces where your sincerity, patience, and wisdom are recognized without the need for explanation. And while others crumble under false narratives, gossip, and misinterpretation, you remain steadfast and steady, because your heart is not split between who you are and who people think you are, and that unity within yourself provides unparalleled clarity, peace, and emotional independence. And this is why your presence feels grounded, centered, and unshaken in any situation, because you are no longer living to be interpreted correctly by everyone around you, but to be sincere, obedient, and truthful before Allah. And that sincerity acts as a shield, enabling you to navigate life without carrying the heavy burden of public opinion, judgment, or misunderstanding, knowing with certainty that on the day when all secrets are revealed and all misunderstandings are corrected, Allah will expose the truth of every intention, heart, and silent act of patience, and in that knowledge you find rest, confidence, strength, and the rare courage to remain yourself in a world that constantly pressures people to perform, explain, justify, and conform, because you know that ultimate recognition, validation, and reward do not come from creation, but from the Creator who sees what no one else sees, who knows what no one else knows, and who measures every trial, every patience, and every action with perfect justice and infinite wisdom. And this realization empowers you to move forward with quiet assurance, unwavering faith, and unmatched resilience, knowing that being misunderstood is not a failure, but a privilege reserved for those walking the path of truth, sincerity, and divine alignment, and that in embracing this reality, you not only protect your soul from the corrosive weight of others' perceptions, but also cultivate a heart capable of true compassion, discernment, and spiritual clarity, a heart that is ready to endure, thrive, and lead in accordance with Allah's guidance, in a world that may never fully understand you, but in which your loyalty to Him, your patience, and your steadfastness will leave an indelible mark that extends far beyond appearances, opinions, and temporary judgments. You were never created to be a copy, a template, a replica, or a version of someone else. Because Allah's design for you is original, intentional, and divinely purposeful, and that uniqueness is not something that can be manufactured, taught, or imitated by any human system, program, or effort. Because what He places in the heart of a chosen servant is a combination of trials, clarity, patience, and spiritual awareness that is calibrated specifically for the mission only you are meant to fulfill. And while the world may try to study your actions, mimic your decisions, replicate your strategies, or imitate your patience, they inevitably fail, because leadership, true leadership, is not about tactics, appearances, methods, or intelligence alone. It is about responsibility under unseen pressure, accountability when no one is watching, and alignment with divine purpose. And Allah only entrusts such a weight to hearts that have been refined in ways others cannot endure, tested through moments that strip away ego, purified through hardships that cannot be shortcut, and strengthened by solitude that is necessary for clarity and reliance on Him, which is why attempts to clone your presence, your influence, your vision, or your approach always collapse, because those who attempt it do not carry the crucible of trials that shaped your resilience. They do not know the nights of isolation that taught you introspection. They did not endure the repeated delays that built your patience, nor did they surrender in the ways that forged your unwavering trust in Allah. And leadership cannot be learned from manuals, imitation, or repetition. It is cultivated through the silent victories of endurance, through navigating complexities alone, through making choices guided by conscience and divine insight rather than convenience or approval, and through the willingness to walk paths that others fear, ignore, or reject. And this is why you cannot be replicated, because replication assumes surface-level duplication without the depth, spiritual grounding, divine authorization, or intimate alignment with Allah that exists within you. And what Allah has placed in you is not superficial. It is profound, multi-layered, intrinsically tied to your purpose, and impossible to reproduce, making you irreplaceable and unmistakable, while those who attempt to copy your methods fail to grasp the essence. Because leadership is not only skill, it is integrity maintained under pressure, clarity preserved amidst chaos, courage exercised in isolation, patience sustained when misunderstood, and faith that flourishes in opposition. And these qualities cannot be learned by observation or imitation, because they are cultivated only through a unique and intimate relationship with Allah, through obedience in secrecy, through reliance that persists in uncertainty, through resilience built in the absence of recognition, and through surrender that cannot be faked. And this is why leadership is a sacred responsibility, not a privilege, because it is meant to shape not only your actions but also your character, to purify your intentions, and to expand your capacity to influence in ways that are measured by Allah alone. And this responsibility requires that every thought, every emotion, every action, every moment of patience, and every heartbeat aligns with the one who knows your limits better than you ever could. And this alignment transforms you into a guide for others, a beacon of clarity in darkness, a model of resilience, and a servant whose influence extends beyond what the eye can see, shaping hearts, circumstances, and outcomes in ways that cannot be replicated by imitation, pretense, or superficial effort. And when you internalize this truth, you gain clarity, confidence, and unwavering purpose, because you realize you were never meant to be duplicated, imitated, or replaced. You were meticulously and intentionally crafted to lead, to inspire, to endure, and to accomplish a divine assignment that only you, with your unique combination of trials, patience, insight, and faith, can fulfill. And understanding this truth liberates you from comparison, from envy, from the pressure to perform like someone else, and frees you to step fully into the authority, responsibility, patience, and vision that Allah intended for you, knowing that every challenge, every delay, every test, every isolation, and every moment of misunderstanding was designed to prepare you for the weight of leadership that only you were capable of carrying. And you move, think, endure, and act differently because you were never created to fit the mold of someone else, but to stand firm in the original, unparalleled, and divinely guided path that Allah prepared exclusively for you, a path that elevates your soul, sharpens your insight, strengthens your patience, and ensures that your legacy, impact, and leadership remain eternal, unreplicable, and rooted in the divine. And in this understanding, you find not only peace, confidence, and resilience, but also the sacred fulfillment of knowing that you are walking exactly the path Allah intended, leading exactly the mission He chose for you, and becoming exactly the person He designed you to be, a leader whose strength, vision, faith, and influence are entirely unique, entirely original, and eternally irreplaceable. Remember this: Allah did not create you to be copied, to be understood by everyone, or to be confined by their expectations. He created you to be a force of purpose, a vessel of patience, a beacon of discernment, and a leader whose impact cannot be replicated. Those who tried to imitate you failed not because you were superior in skill, but because Allah placed a unique combination of trials, faith, and vision in your heart, a blueprint no human hand can reproduce. So, walk with confidence, remain steadfast in your silence, move with divine purpose, and trust that every delay, every challenge, and every moment of misunderstanding was preparing you for your role, your mission, and your legacy. Stand firm, because you are chosen, you are guided, and you are irreplaceable. And the world may never fully understand you, but Allah always does. If this message resonated with your soul, like, share, and subscribe to Wisdom of the Prophets. And remember, walk gently, but stand firm. Allah is with you, and He never abandons the one He has chosen.